Hello guys, now today I'm going to be showing you and explaining the syntax of C++. In the last two videos, I showed you how to make a simple C++ mathematical program. Now, that was a very simple program which required little to no C++ knowledge beforehand. All you had to do was follow along and it was pretty simple to make. But there are much more complicated programs you can know by knowing the syntax of C++. Now, I'm going to load up this, going to main.cpp, and look. So, this is what you always start up with. Now, these right here are called comments. Now, I could write whatever I want here, and it will not affect the code below here. It's just comments. Now these comments are little pieces of text that are often used to help others understand your program. Now let's say there are two types of comments. These comments where I write, this is a C++ program. Now normally in most compilers and IDEs, the comments will pop up green, but in code blocks specifically, the comments will pop up in a kind of violet, in a kind of really light violet. Now you could write comments like that, and you can also write comments like this. Now you can see that this can turn a whole thing into a comment, but then you have to do this to end it. So you could write whatever you want here. I don't know. Same thing. C++ program. So that's a pretty simple concept. Chances are you might not use it too much if you're an individual programmer, but if you work for a big company, these are very essential because it tells others who are viewing your program what's actually going on. So programs should be easy to understand for others. So that's almost an essential thing that programmers should do. They should always make their programs as easy to understand. So, comments was something. So I'm just going to write. I'm just going to leave it like that. Okay. So, now I'm wondering, why isn't this turning violet? Well, you may have already noticed that I didn't even use the right flashes. I need to use these ones. So just watch out for that. That probably might happen to you a good amount of time. Now there's also special symbols. Now these special symbols often are often used to mathematically do things, right? Now, for example, there is the plus symbol, the multiplication symbol, and the minus symbol. Now these are all used for math, but there are also some other symbols like the equal symbol, which is used and often most in if statements, because if something is equal to 2, then do this, then do this. I don't know, but that's usually where that symbol is used. Now, there's also reserved words or keywords. Now, these things are actually called tokens, meaning they are functions that are inputted into the C++ program. Now, tokens can mean many things. There's the integer token, which you can use them like this, int number. And there's also the float token, which these two are actually different types of variables. And there's also the void token, and one token that there is also right here is the return token. That one is in every C++ program ever to exist. So there are also a category of tokens called identifiers. Identifiers are tokens that are defined by the user. Now, an example of a identifier would be number. Identifiers can also be called names of variables. So, for example, length, like we used last time, is an identifier. There are a number of rules about identifiers. One is that they cannot have any spaces in between, meaning that you can't have something that looks a bit like this. Burgers eaten. You can't have a variable, an identifier that looks like that, because you can't have any spaces between them, which is why many programmers use a type of writing called camel case when making identifiers. Now, there are also some other rules. For example, you cannot ever have a exclamation mark in your identifier. Now, aside from exclamation marks, you can't have any special symbols in here at all. For example, I can't have something like this, burgers equal to eaten, burgers plus eaten. I can't put anything like that because you're not allowed to have special symbols. Now, you are also not allowed to have numbers in identifiers. I can't put 3 burgers eaten. Now, there's also something called white spaces. Now, white spaces are things including blanks, tabs, and new line characters. For example, a space is just a white space. A tab is a white space. These are things to make your C++ program more readable and easier to understand. Proper use of white spaces are imperative in making a very readable, understandable C++ program. Now, different data types in C++. The objective of a program, in fact, is to manipulate data in order to get what you want or to get what others want. Some programs can manipulate data differently. For example, a program designed to calculate your paycheck will add, subtract, multiply, and divide numbers, and some of the numbers might represent the hours worked and pay rate. Similarly, a program designed to alphabetize a class list will manipulate names. You wouldn't use a cherry pie recipe to help you bake cookies, would you? Similarly, you wouldn't use a program designed to perform arithmetic calculations to manipulate alphabetic characters. Reflecting these underlying differences, a C++ categorizes data into different types, and only certain operations can be performed on these different types of data. Now, sometimes you might worry about making different mistakes, but C++ has different error searchers that will protect you against these fatal errors. Now, there are 3 C++ data types. There are simple data types, structured data types, and pointers. For the next few, for most of the time, you'll only be concerned with simple data types. Now, simple data types there are 3 categories of simple data, which are integers, also called integral data types, floating point. Now the difference between integers and floating points are the fact that integers deal with whole numbers or numbers without a decimal point, and floating points deal with numbers that do have a decimal point. Now, an example of integrals would be char, short, and int. Now, surprisingly to many, bool is also an integral data type. Now, the reason that there are more than 10 classes of integral data types. Now, the reason there are so many is because you have a number of things to do. You can do a number of things with these different data types. For example, bool is used to answer a yes or no question, and int is used to calculate numbers, and all of the other ones have many different possibilities that you can do with them. Now, floating point data types are numbers that contain decimals. Now, oftentimes, floating points can be used to use scientific notation, and so this is how you do it. Now, many of these identifiers and keywords are used to write variables. Now, variables are values in a C++ program. They're identifiers which represent different values. Now, to write a variable, first you must type up what type of data it's going to be. For example, if it's going to be an integer, write int, space, write its identifier, Here I'm going to write hamburger, I don't know. Now you put a semicolon at the end. Now there are a number of different identifiers and data types. So for that, I'm going to write a little equation out right here for you guys. So right here, a variable is going to be data type space identifier semicolon, and there. That is more or less how you write a variable in C++. Now, there's also Now, after learning about all of this, I hope you guys use your coding knowledge to write a few of your own programs. Even though you are still learning, I think you guys could write a good amount of programs using the few amount of examples and knowledge I have given you. Now, that's it for this video, guys. Bye.